Welcome to the Scientific Montessori podcast, where we translate the latest academic research into Montessori-aligned practices and share insights to make parenting dramatically easier. This episode brings you the audio version of our article, How Life Was Created. To explore more articles, visit scientificmontessori.com.
Montessori education for ages 6 to 12 isn't very well known. I'd like to talk about Aid to Life, preparing the environment for natural development for this age group.
In a word, it's about survival.
What do you mean?
Sorry to jump straight to the conclusion, but since this topic takes a while to explain, I thought I'd start with the main point. By the way, we don't hold the International Teacher Certification for the 6 to 12 age group. What we're discussing is based on reading all of Maria Montessori's works and all the elementary-level texts published by AMI and AMS, combined with our own developmental theory research.
We've also read research papers on Montessori education from around the world, and we've done our own investigations into Montessori elementary graduates.
That's right. We know which school Larry Page attended, which school Sergey Brin attended, and about Jeff Bezos' elementary school years. As for Will Wright's games, I've probably played them more than anyone else in the Montessori community.
I actually knew Will Wright's games before I knew about Montessori education, so I was amazed when I started recognizing the Montessori materials his games were based on.
Personally, I was shocked that almost no one in the Japanese Montessori community knows about Will Wright, SimCity, SimEarth, and Spore.
And The Sims and SimAnt.
When you play them, you get a window into how someone raised in Montessori Elementary thinks.
For example, in Spore, we simulated 500 million years of life's history.
Right. It was an epic journey, starting as a single-celled organism and heading toward the center of the galaxy. We even experienced terraforming.
I remember thinking things I'd never normally consider, like, I'm really glad humans are omnivores, and ideals like nonviolence alone won't make running a nation work.
Some of that is due to game design choices, but as an opportunity to think about problems you'd never consider in everyday life or gain perspectives you'd otherwise never have, and as materials for 612 Elementary, Will Wright's simulation games are unparalleled.
SimAnt is an ant simulation game, and the manual includes not just controls, but an encyclopedia-like section on ant ecology. It's a difficult game, so at first, things don't go well. When you get stuck and read the manual to understand ant ecology, you mysteriously get better at the game.
All real knowledge is used, and it connects to reality. I heard Will Wright say in a lecture, there are some game design adjustments to make it more fun, though.
I played Sims so much when I was in elementary school. It's a life simulation game. Basically a digital version of playing with dolls, but you can see various human needs quantified, and you arrange furniture and adjust the environment to satisfy them.
Fundamental human needs.
Exactly. It's a major theme in elementary education, and it's a simulation of the preparing the environment aspect of Aid to Life that we're discussing now. From this game, I learned and resolved, when I grow up, I'm definitely going to sleep in a good bed.
I see. SimCity is probably known by more people. It's a simulation game where you become mayor.
Since it was released for Super Nintendo, many people know the game, but I don't think they know it was created by a Montessori elementary graduate.
Setting aside the game content, what Will Wright said about game design was you learn more by actually becoming a mayor than by reading a book like How to Become a Mayor.
That really sums it up. I agonized so much over where to put the waste treatment plant. Now I understand how the current mayor of Morioka feels.
Right. You start thinking about real political issues as if they were your own. Your perspective on urban planning and city design changes.
I learned that cities grow over time and that you always have to be aware of the fiscal situation. I was a notorious mayor who drove my city to bankruptcy many times.
When you're too particular about things, you can't manage effectively.
And when the management target becomes the Earth, that's SimEarth.
First of all, it's hard just to create an environment where life can emerge.
Starting from there.
Aid to Life really is difficult. Not too hot, not too cold.
With carbon dioxide and oxygen in the right proportions.
Right. You have to pay close attention to atmospheric composition. The wonderful thing is that you can think childish thoughts like octopuses have taken over the Earth, so should I hit it with an asteroid and reset and actually try it?
It makes you think about the real dinosaur extinction, too. I'd love for today's children to play this.
Exactly. But all these games are old now, hard to find, and there are technical issues. I'd be grateful if someone would remake them, but it seems like no one will, so maybe I should do it myself.
Various people have tried, but I think you really can't make them without understanding Montessori education and developmental theory. They're essentially modern Montessori materials.
Yeah, it requires knowledge plus sensitivity plus technical skill. It's difficult.
The Sim Earth Manual was written by Hitoshi Takeuchi, a geophysicist and professor emeritus at the University of Tokyo.
The age of the professor.
Montessori described the 6 to 12 stage as the age of the professor.
Yes, but personally, I think age of survival is more appropriate.
We've come back to your initial conclusion. Why is that?
Looking at the 4 planes of development, ages 6 to 12 correspond to the second plane. In the first plane, it's a phase of integrating senses and movement, and through that integration, imagination expands.
Moving from concrete to abstract.
Then the question arises, what should that imagination be used for? Looking at what happens in the third plane, it leads to Erdkinder, Children of the Earth. That's a program where students learn practical self-sufficiency from life on a farm.
The secondary of the third. Secondary corresponds to a time when hormonal balance is unstable, so the idea is to calm down by working with the soil. This stage is also called the social newborn.
The fourth plane corresponds to university age, a time to prepare for entering social life. But personally, I think of it as the age of natural philosophy.
Since the first and third planes are similar enough to both be called newborn stages, and the second and fourth planes are similar enough to both be called professor stages, your interpretation seems to fit.
Yes, so the fourth plane has a very academic feel. Elementary in the second plane is a phase of broadly and deeply learning about nature at the scale of the cosmos, Earth, and life. Knowledge needed for the third plane. To do that, you need to develop literacy in numbers and language. In other words, you need to acquire real knowledge that can withstand the self-sufficiency of secondary.
Where does the survival aspect come in?
In secondary, you'll be dealing with many plants and animals, so you need to understand natural ecosystems. You need to understand how the Earth works, natural phenomena, and so on.
That's true. As with Will Wright's games, after learning at a macroscopic scale, you could approach farming and animal husbandry with new perspectives from the viewpoint of the cosmos and ecosystems.
Rather than that, knowing how life was created before engaging with actual nature versus not knowing changes the difficulty level.
That connects to the SimAnt discussion.
The organism in front of you is an Earth organism, a life form in the universe. It plays some role in the ecosystem. For example, if you know that honeybees pollinate flowers, you'd want to use fewer pesticides.
Right.
Just because something isn't toxic to vertebrates doesn't mean you should spread neurotoxins that affect invertebrates in nature. On a planetary scale, that definitely has negative impacts.
Tracing the 3.8 billion year history of life would inspire reverence for life.
Absolutely. It's a desecration of all life. I think it stems from ignorance of that miraculous history.
You mentioned atmospheric composition earlier. There's lots of nitrogen in the air, and there are microorganisms in the soil that can convert atmospheric nitrogen into forms plants can use. Ignoring that and spreading chemical fertilizers should also feel wrong.
Mycorrhizal fungi. In short, I think people who think they've learned just by memorizing right and wrong answers from static textbooks can't grasp nature's dynamic equilibrium. The real test comes in secondary, where you find out whether what you've learned actually works in nature.
That's harsh. Nature passes judgment.
Current mainstream education keeps moving further from the real thing. It's like a simulation of a simulation of a simulation.
There's no real work.
Spending lots of time there won't make you wiser. I feel like the fundamental things that should be learned aren't being learned. Being good at entrance exams isn't really an essential measure of intelligence.
I know of overseas secondary examples where they also function like universities. Teachers act as facilitators, bringing in university professors for opt-in lectures. They also encourage internships at companies. Since students can already do university-level work, being good at entrance exams isn't really the point.
Right, they normally use university research labs too.
Teachers also teach how to read academic papers, and the children conduct research in agriculture and natural sciences. They also do activities like designing and building cabins. They do real work and learn the knowledge needed for it.
Elementary is the preparation period for that, so students need to gain as much real knowledge as possible. The curriculum that provides an intuitive understanding of the roles of humanity, language, and numbers from the grand perspective of cosmic, earth, and life history exists only in Montessori education. We want to steadily evolve and spread it.
I'll continue the research.
Having the foundational knowledge that civilization was built from the beginning of the universe through galaxies, the solar system, Earth, and life, learning various things with that background versus without it, changes both learning efficiency and the conclusions reached in discussions.
That's right, though spreading this isn't easy.
It's not that difficult. If you know history, you realize we're just following the law of inertia, moving in a certain direction. Once you notice that, it happens quickly.
Children might be more receptive since they have fewer prejudices.
Exactly. World peace begins with children.
Thank you for listening to the Scientific Montessori podcast. We hope today's episode helped you see how research and Montessori principles can make parenting simpler and more meaningful. For more articles and resources, visit scientificmontessori.com and join us again next time.